Well, hello. Haven't been live for a while. Decided I needed to. I took a week off, I'll admit. I had a release that I got out. Now I need to work on the next one. So that is where I've been. That is where I've been. Where'd I go? Okay. Good deal. Good deal. All right, so we are editing book 11 today. And we are looking at the first 17,000 words. Now, Grammarly, unfortunately, only allows you to work with 100,000 characters at a time, which is honestly just annoying. I really wish that it allowed you to do more at once. But we're doing some boring stuff. This is line editing. That's what we're doing today on book 11. And the thing is, Grammarly is pretty spot on. It really is. Hold on, it's taking its time to think here for a second. Grammarly is pretty spot on, and it's cheaper than paying an editor to do line editing for you. In fact, if you wanted to do line editing, what I would do, if I wanted to be someone's line editor, I would just put it through Grammarly. Because that's the point. That's where Grammarly is. Grammarly is honestly, in some ways, there's some things that it won't catch that a human still has to see. But it sees more. Well, in fact, there's actually one right here. There was Bo Answer. Although this, we're only looking at correctness. This might be under clarity. I go to clarity. Yep, no, there it is. So it did catch it. I'm just not looking at those. I'm looking at correctness. And so it's looking at other things. Word choice, that sort of thing. So you could literally charge people a pretty cheap price for line editing. You know, their manuscript. And just run it through Grammarly. And you'd get a pretty solid finished product. That's what you get. So that's where we're going to start. We're just going to start with Grammarly instead. So we got 247 suggestions here to get through. Can I add a counter? Can I do that? Add an item. Oh, no, I don't want to add that. Okay, never mind. All right. So, lay. Yes, that is the correct use of that word. Push himself up to his hands and knees. There's a comma. Missing comma. Yeah, that's right. So this is a style choice. Having basically not using the conjunction and simply listing without the and. It's the way people talk. People don't always say and. They just sometimes talk that way. So I oftentimes, unless it helps with clarity, I dismiss these. You know what? I wonder.
Saved. 17,741 words. Hide Assistant. 91 overall score. See performance goals 4 of 4 set generative
Okay, that
AI
didn't
get
work.
expert writing help plagiarism. Club.
That didn't work. Do I have to select the text? And then say, speak that? Maybe not.
Chapter 1 Gerald 1 The floor of the hopper was cold against his face. Gerald lay there for a moment in disbelief. His fate seemed sealed, just as the portal now was. Eben, are you there? He looked over to the relic sitting there on the floor, but there was no answer. Eben was...
We shouldn't have a better voice than that.
Hello, my name is Samantha. I am an American English voice.
Hello, my name is Nathan. I am an American English voice.
Hello, my name is Evan. I am an American English voice.
Oh, that's great.
Hello, my name is Allison. I am an American English voice.
That one's the clearest. There should be.
Hello, my name is Rishi. I am an Indian English voice.
Okay. Where are...
Hello, my name is Ava. I am an American English voice. Hello, my name is Ava. I am an American English voice.
That one's actually not bad.
Hello, my name is Joelle. I am an American English voice.
It's a little...
Hello, my name is Noelle. I am an American English voice.
It's a little intense there.
Hello, my name is Aaron.
Hi, I'm Siri. Hi, I'm Siri.
Hi, I'm Siri.
Hi, I'm Siri.
Hi, I'm Siri.
I think I can use one of those voices, can't I?
Hi, I'm Siri.
Hi, I'm Siri.
I think we can use that one. There's a Tom.
Hello, my name is Tom. I am an American English voice.
I don't think so. Sorry, Tom.
Hello, my name is Susan. I am an American English voice. Hello, my name is Zoe. I am an American English voice. Hello, my name is Karen. I am an Australian English voice.
Hello, my name is Lee. I am an Australian English voice.
Actually, I don't mind that. I'm not Australian, but you know.
Hello, my name is Matilda. I am an Australian English voice.
Hello, my name is Isha. I am an Indian English voice.
Hello, my name is Sanchita. I'm an Indian English voice.
Hello, my name is Veena. I am an Indian English voice.
Hello, my name is Moira. I am an Irish English voice.
Hi, I'm Siri.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Fiona. I am a Scottish English voice.
Hello, my name is Daniel. I am a British English voice.
We almost have to do that one now, don't we?
Hello, my name is Jamie. I am a British English voice.
Hello, my name is Kate. I am a British English voice.
Hello, my name is Oliver. I am a British English voice.
Okay. 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 We've got more now. Allison sounded really good.
Hello, my name is Allison. I am an American English voice.
That one's just very clean. No garbling.
Hello, my name is Ava. I am an American English voice.
That's okay.
Hello, my name is Zoe. I am an American English voice.
It's like the female names are just, you know.
The sum of the squares of the legs of a right triangle is equal to the square of the hypotenuse.
Never forget that. That's true. Nathan?
Hello, my name is Nathan. I am an American English voice.
I think we're going to try Nathan. Let's give it a try. Now that we've done all that.
Chapter 1 Gerald won. The floor of the hopper was cold against his face. Gerald lay there for a moment in disbelief. His fate seemed sealed, just as the portal now was. Eben, are you there? He looked over to the relic sitting there on the floor, but there was no answer. Eben was gone. The walls of the hopper groaned, hissing and popping as pressure was being placed on the shuttle from outside. The Grackle. Gerald pushed himself up to his hands and knees, only to be thrown back down by a sudden quake that shook the entire ship. He could hear the jump drive spinning up, but something wasn't right. It should have jumped by now, he muttered, crawling across the floor to the cockpit, pulling himself up by the seat with all the strength he had in reserve. He eyed the bright red warning on the display console. Critical system failure, containment breach. Jumps aborted. Shit. The Kraken would be perfectly happy to rip the hopper open at its seams and pluck out the relic, having no regard for what it would mean for Gerald to be floating adrift in empty space. And once they had the relic, they would be able to activate it, and all of the work they had done to get the fleet to safety would have been in vain. Thras would become a death trap, and humanity would be lost forever. The hopper rocked again, throwing Gerald back out of the cockpit, sliding across the floor.
A death pit forever. Oh my goodness, that was pretty bad. Does it need to be faster?
Hello, my name is Nathan. Hello, my name is Nathan. I am an American English voice. Hello, my name is Nathan. I am an American English voice.
No. What about Lee?
Hello, my name is Lee.
Let's try Lee. It's UK? No, it's Aussie. He's an Aussie.
Hello, my name is Daniel. I am a British English voice.
Oh my gosh, I'm so tempted. I'm so tempted. But well, let's go with Lee. It's an Australian voice, but it's not bad.
Chapter 1 Gerald won. The floor of the hopper was cold against his face. Gerald lay there for a moment in disbelief. His fate seemed sealed, just as the portal now was. Eben, are you there? He looked over to the relic sitting there on the floor, but there was no answer. Eben was gone. The walls of the hopper groaned, hissing and popping as pressure was being placed on the shuttle from outside. The Kraken. Gerald pushed himself up to his hands and knees, only to be thrown back down by a sudden quake that shook the entire ship. He could hear the jump drive spinning up, but something wasn't right. It should have jumped by now, he muttered, crawling across the floor to the cockpit, pulling himself up by the seat with all the strength he had in reserve. He eyed the bright red warning on the display console: critical system failure, containment breach, jump aborted shit. The Kraken would be perfectly happy to rip the hopper open at its seams and pluck out the relic, having no regard for what it would mean for Gerald to be floating adrift in empty space. And once they had the relic, they would be able to activate it. And all of the work they had done to get the fleet to safety would have been in vain. Thras would become a death trap, and humanity would be lost forever. The hopper rocked again, throwing Gerald back out of the cockpit, sliding across the floor. The relic stopped his movement, seemingly the only thing in the shuttle that wasn't being thrown around, defying physics as it remained frozen in place. Eben, open the portal, Gerald pleaded, but he realized how selfish that was. For him to pass through the portal and leave the relic undefended would only mean temporary salvation. Gerald woke in a cold sweat, jumping to his feet out of instinct. He found himself in a hospital room, a bed in front of him, his arms hooked up to an IV and other monitors. He was dressed in a white hospital gown, his uniform gone and nowhere to be seen. Was he back on Intrepid? How could he be? He could sense that he was in artificial gravity, which meant he wasn't planetside. He racked his mind, trying to recall his last memory before waking up. All he could conjure were those moments after the portal had closed. What had been replaying over and over in his head as he'd slept for what seemed like an inordinate amount of time. A door opened, and a pair of nurses entered the room. Gerald recognized the Space Corps insignia on their uniforms but didn't know their faces. They weren't his crew. Where am I? Gerald shouted at them. He backed himself into the corner of the room. What is this ship? Tell me. Calm down, sir, one of the nurses urged him, trying to get closer. You need to lay back down. Gerald looked at the monitors, his heart rate through the roof, setting off alarms. He ripped the monitors off his arms and chest, then carefully removed the IV from the back of his hand. You're going to tell me what ship I'm on and where I am, and you're going to do it now. What's the status of the fleet? Are we in orbit over Thras? For a brief moment, as he said the words aloud, he held on to a thread of hope. Maybe everything had worked itself out on its own somehow. Maybe. Thras? Sir, I don't know anything about that. We were trying to rendezvous with the fleet, but we didn't make it in time. You're on the Ardent, sir. Gerald blinked. How was that possible? The fleet made it through. No one was supposed to be left behind. Gerald closed his eyes to keep the room around him from spinning. He's awake, a man's voice asked. I told you to ping me once he was up. He just woke up, Captain. We didn't have the chance to notify you yet. Gerald peered through a cloudy gaze, seeing the man standing there in the doorway, suppose Gerald was talking about. There was an object in there with you. It was metallic, gold-colored. It covered you in the hopper, like a pot of some sort. It's hard to explain. Gerald had no memory of that. But you have it still? You didn't throw it out the airlock with the trash, did you? Daniel shook his head. No. Sir, we still have it. Safe and sound. It changed shape, which was concerning. But I figured you'd be able to answer my questions on that. What is it? You called it a relic? Gerald sighed, sitting down in the edge of the hospital bed. It's what all of this bullshit has been about since I can remember. The damn thing can open a gateway. A portal that you can pass through. There's another one just like it on Thras. Daniel's eyes went wide. I have to admit, sir, I thought it was a lie. Something that the commanding officers told the fleet and the people just to put us at ease. You're not pulling my leg? It's really Thras on the other side of that thing? It is. The real deal. It's not much of a paradise, though. It's been blasted to hell. Scarcely any life left on it. But it's better than being bait for the Kraken. Right. So we were just going to start over in another distant corner of the galaxy, and hope the Kraken didn't follow us. Gerald pursed his lips, trying to figure out how to say it without drawing offense. We were going to destroy it, the relic. That hopper was supposed to jump into the nearest star, vaporize itself in the relic. That way, no one could never follow us. To Gerald's surprise, Daniel wasn't offended. The fact that they were almost left behind seemed to escape him. Instead, a smile appeared on his face, his ruddy cheeks perking up, lifting the corners of his eyes. So, you're saying we could still go through? We could still join the fleet? Now came the real letdown. It hurt just to formulate the words. I don't know. We might not be able to. The relic, it wasn't something I knew how to activate. A friend of mine, he knew how, but he's in the other side. Gerald looked Daniel dead in the eyes, so there was no mistaking what he was saying. I can't promise you anything, Daniel. We have the relic, but I don't know what that means, to be honest with you. Daniel turned away for a moment. Gerald could see him wrestling with the reality he just dropped on him. He took a seat in a chair across the room from the foot of the bed. If we can't get that relic working, then we're fucked. The Kraken have decimated everything. If we're stuck on this side, things are going to get ugly fast. Food, water, parts for repairs, you name it. We'll run out of it before long, and life on this ship will become a living hell. Gerald tried not to imagine it for longer than a moment. Then we can't lie down and take it. We need a plan, a goal, something to give the crew a mission and a purpose. If that's really going to be our demise, we might as well hold out hope and search for a solution with every minute we still have available to us. Aye, sir, Daniel said, apparently taking it as an order. He stood, saluting. I hereby relinquish command of the CSS Arden to you, Colonel Norim. Sir, Gerald waved his hands in refusal. No, I don't need to take command of your ship. I'm in no condition to. The crew needs their captain at the helm, and that's you, Rybko. They need steadiness, and a new commanding officer might stir up more trouble than it's worth. Daniel stood at ease, awkwardly. Of course, sir, I totally agree. Gerald laughed. I'll still be here to advise you. We'll figure out this problem together, and our first order of business is going to be finding a safe place to hide from the Kraken. After that, we can tackle the issues of supplies, maybe even finding a rock somewhere that we can land on that the Kraken haven't blown up. Then the relic. Sir, Gerald responded with measured optimism. We will see. Daniel nodded, his eyes perking up a moment later. Oh, I don't want to forget. He stepped out of the room for a moment, returning with a freshly pressed set of greys we had your size, sir, and I personally took the liberty of retrieving your insignia and honors from your old uniform. The nurses had to cut it off of you when they brought you into the infirmary. Daniel set the uniform down at the edge of the bed, patting it gently with one hand. After an awkward moment of silence, he said, when you're ready, sir, feel free to join me on the bridge. Daniel left and Gerald eyed the insignia there, resting on top of the uniform he'd brought him. He grabbed the Seren three-pointed star with his thumb and forefinger, staring at the red enamel that covered its surface. It was one of the last reminders of who he was, where he came from and where he was going. Like the crew, he needed a mission, too, a purpose to drive him forward, and it wasn't hard to find. I'll see you soon, Abby. Chapter 2. Cars 1. All right, I think I'm done being carried for today, Kaz said. But Tathis showed no intent of slowing down. We have to put as much space between us and the monolith as possible. They'll be after us soon, and we need to cover as much ground under cover of dark as we can. He was truly a machine, a robot covered in skin with a brain in his head. He didn't stop, not even to catch his breath. Kaz was in his arms like a small child, having lost the strength to stand some time ago. They were under the stars, 1,000 sparkles spread out in the sky over their heads. Having grown up on Vey, where hardly a star could be seen in the night sky, this new world had become like a security blanket to her, and she feared it was being ripped away. I knew you were coming to get me, you know, she said, staring blankly up into the sky. I don't know why you came back, but I knew you would. Tathis started up a small hill, which scarcely seems to affect him. And how did you know I'd come back? I saw that fucking robot's head in the hall. That's your thing, snapping necks. They should call you the decapitator. Kaz made a whole show of it, waving her hand across the tapestry of the sky. But Tathis seemed less than impressed. I'd rather not be known by any name, he said. It was never intended to be a calling card. It's just efficient. That's all. Kaz felt herself drifting away to sleep in his arms, like he was rocking her to sleep with every step. The cool night air on her skin was just right to make her eyes start to feel heavy. Are we friends, Tathis? Is that why you came back? Tathis didn't say anything for a second, almost to the point that Kaz thought he hadn't heard her. Yeah, he said. We're friends. She drifted off into her dreams, his firm bicep like a pillow for her head. Her visions were intense and violent, the kind she used to have when she was a killer. Considering the dates she brought on Glax earlier that day, she still was. But in her dreams she was always too slow, always a step behind. Like her mind didn't want her to get too cocky. She had forgotten what it meant to be afraid, and it was reminding her. When she woke, she was on the ground, amongst a gathering of trees. First light had come maybe an hour ago, judging by the brightness of the sky. She couldn't see Tathis, but she could hear him, somewhere off in the thickets nearby. She sat up in the middle of the clearing that he had set her down in, her gown, color, still somehow holding on after the last 24 hours or so of hell she'd just been through. It was in tatters, hardly recognizable, but it was still there, having kept her warm through the wee hours of the night. Tathis returned with a bundle of sticks under his arm. You can go back to sleep, he said, dropping the firewood into a small pit he must have dug. Kaz noticed the dirt on his fingers and the palms of his hands. I don't know when we will get the next chance to rest, he continued. So you'd better take it. And you're starting a fire? Won't that draw attention? I know how to build a fire without smoke. Besides, do you have any rations on you? Or clean drinking water? Wow. Kaz stuck her legs out straight in a V, plopping her arms down in front of her. She was well aware how much she looked like a toddler in that moment, but she didn't care. Don't realize you were a Star Scout, or whatever. A what? I don't know. It was a Seren thing. Kids would go build campfires in a forest, learn survival skills or something like that. We always made fun of it on Vey. Tathis proceeded to dig a hole in a peculiar fashion. Kaz supposed it had something to do with his promise of a smokeless fire. Before long, though, he had it going, and while it wasn't entirely smokeless, it was modest enough that it probably wouldn't attract much attention. Tathis straightened. There's a stream nearby. I'll be right back. Hold on, Kaz said. She struggled to get herself up to her feet. I'm coming with you. The 7 hells you are. I carried you enough last night. You need calories and hydration so you can recover. Until then, sit down. Tathis turned his back to her, fully intending to leave it at that. Too heavy for you, huh? She jibed. It didn't stick. Do you even have a plan? Or are you just going to run like a coward? You couldn't think of anything better? That struck a nerve. Tathis turned around slowly, walking halfway back from where he'd gotten. Some appreciation is in order, I think. There was no way you were getting out of that cell on your own. If it weren't for me, you'd be dead about 90 minutes ago. Kaz ripped off the skirt of her gown, tearing it with her bare hands until all that was left was a tight bodysuit underneath, with tatters of cloth hanging from it. I want to know what the plan is, she said, throwing down the rags she'd just torn off on the ground. Gara's gonna die. That's gotta be somewhere on the list. Maybe not at the top. I can understand that. But promise me you're not intending to let that fucker live. I can't, Tathis. Not after the humiliation he put me through. Nenunga should be the least of your worries right now, Tathis replied. He folded his burly arms in front of his chest, indignant. You don't seem to realize what happened yesterday. Everything you had is gone. Your men are either off planet, dead, or scattered. I'm all you've got right now. And while I'd like to think I'm a pretty patient man, even I have my limits. So don't test them. The plan, Kaz shouted. You haven't said a fucking thing about the plan. Tathis matched her intensity. The plan is to survive. There's no plot to get revenge or strike back at Nenninga. You've lost that fight, Kaz. It's over. The best you can hope for now is to get off this planet, find your son, and keep living. Kaz kicked the dirt between them, but it was no use. Tathis wasn't about to sit there and watch her throw a tantrum, and Kaz herself felt pathetic for the outburst. Her conscience tugged at her in two directions. On one hand, what Gar had done couldn't go unpunished. She kept seeing the insolent look on his face, the pride oozing from his eyes as he stared down at her from her throne. And all of that rightful heir bullshit sent her into a rage. If Mesav had a rightful heir, it was her. Because she had taken the empire by the balls and made it hers. Forget Nebina and any of the other pricks who thought a drop of blood made them king. She took it and it was hers, though. Gar had taken it now, and if that was allowed to stand. And then there were the worries about her son. She knew Catelyn was in good hands. Mila was trustworthy and loyal, both to her and her son. He wouldn't let him come to harm if he had anything to say about it. But Kaz didn't know how far Gar's reach went. Had he merely managed to overthrow her palace guard? Or did he have his fingers in everything? There was no real way to know whether she'd send Catelyn to salvation, or right into a trap that Gar had set. Tathis returned shortly with a canteen full of water. Perhaps it was the few moments of solitude she'd had while he was away, but Kaz didn't feel like fighting anymore. She sat down in the dirt, and watched him bring the water to a boil over the hole he dug in the ground over the fire. If you want to get us off planet, how are we going to do that? Kaz asked. It's not like there are jump drives lying around here in the forest for us to scavenge, or a ship buried in the ground that you can dig up with your bare hands. One of Tathis's eyes turned bright blue, a beam of light shooting out and hitting the water. She assumed he must have been analyzing it for impurities or something. Hello, did you hear me? Tathis produced a small steel cup from the kitchen on his back, then proceeded to pour the water from the canteen through a filter that drilled into it. He handed the piping hot liquid to her, the steel warm to the touch. It looked clean enough, to Kaz at least. There's a settlement nearby, Tathis said. He straightened, resting in one knee. That's going to be our best shot at getting off planet. There is a shuttle there, and it's a more affluent settlement. You may even have some allies there, if there are any who are still loyal to you. Kaz took a sip of water, pulling back sharply at the unexpected heat on her tongue. Shit, what? Not to your liking, Your Majesty? Kaz glared at him over the rim of the cup. Don't patronize me, and if the settlement you're talking about is the same one I'm thinking of, then I would hope I have some friends there. Many from the royal court live there, advisors, nobles, the head servants. I'm sure someone there will be willing to help us. We can't rely on it. We will need to figure something out about your face. Maybe even your voice. No one can see you or know that it's you. Not unless we're absolutely certain that they won't eat us out to Nenninga. Stop calling him that, Kaz snapped. She spat in the dirt. That's not his name. Tathis sighed. No, Kaz. That is his name. I've known him long enough to know he's the genuine article. He's not lying when he says he's the heir to House Seba. He has the proof to back it up. Now, we can argue over whether or not he should be emperor, but that's another story. Kaz suppressed the urge to throw that cup of water at him. If it weren't so hot, maybe she would have. To me he will always be Gar, a cowardly, pathetic, boy lover. I'm sure that would be an insult on Vay, but he doesn't care what anyone thinks of him. What you think of him least of all, those Mesav usurpers, Hakon's men. Do they know that he's a cocksucker? I would have figured it would have given them all the creeps. Not saying I care, but they do. And back on Vay it was only an insult if you were a girl. Men who slept with other men were doing the rest of us a favor, the way we saw it. Tathis shook his head. Whatever you say, and I'm sure Hakon knows, but the thought of a pretender to the throne reigning as empress is more an abomination to them than an emperor who eschews the company of women. Kaz rolled her eyes. Progress. Tathis took back the empty cup from Kaz, filled it up again for himself. What I need to know, Kaz, is this. If the opportunity presents itself and we can get off planet, I need to know that you'll come with me and you won't sabotage the whole thing. We have to get off this planet. And where would we go? To Asylum where I sent Kadina? Tathis stopped mid-sip. His eyes widened. You sent him where? Kaz gave him a cockeyed look. To Asylum. I figured Junior would be able to keep him safe. Junior? You mean Ebner? Tathis looked disheartened. This is a wrinkle. What? Why is that? I thought you two were chums. Whatever your freaky three-way marriage thing is you couldn't do. It's not the same thing, and no, we aren't on good terms. Cuz, your son isn't safe there. What do you mean? Tathis, tell me what you mean. Tathis pushed a pile of dirt into the pit he dug, snuffing out the fire. Ebener isn't himself. I can tell you more on the way. Come on. Tathis helped her up to her feet, and for the first time she felt she had the strength to walk. The insult of Gar, Nenanga's betrayal, was meaningless in light of the peril her son might be facing. She hurried to catch up to Tathis as they walked out of the clearing and into the thicket. Tell me everything. Chapter 3 Captain 1 How far off are we? Captain asked, leaning in the pilot's seat where Mila was sitting. I thought we would be there by now. Mila sighed, looking up at him over his right shoulder. His graying beard danced with every movement of his lips, telling more than his words did half the time. We had to make a series of jumps to move around the potential choke points. I'm sure Nenanga has ships in place to catch us, and we can't be too trusting in this hour, Your Highness. I've been avoiding getting anywhere close to occupied space. Captain nodded, trying to seem like he understood what Mila was telling him. It would have been much faster if we'd have been able to go with the flagship. Their jump drive could have gotten us there much quicker, and we'd have had the firepower to shoot down anyone who got in our way. Mila chuckled. And let me guess, you would be commanding Her Majesty's flagship? I think not. You train me. Mila, what are you saying? You didn't do a good enough job? I'm saying the ship would have been a hindrance. It's still unclear what part of the chain of command is loyal to your mother, or is it? We could have been walking into a trap. And even if we had been able to take the final judgment to Asylum, we would have called more attention to ourselves than what it's worth. Captain let out a sigh, turning away from the cockpit and walking back to the crew area. Priya was there, as pretty as ever, just sitting there with a blank stare in her eyes. I guess you didn't expect to be returning home so soon, Captain said, sitting next to her in the bench. I hope you won't be getting in any trouble for that. Priya smiled. While my return will no doubt be unexpected, it will not be met with ire. The Lord Cynic is fond of your mother, and once he learns of what has transpired he will welcome us with open arms. That's good, Captain said. He was just trying to make conversation at this point, anything to take his mind off of the prolonged space travel he was having to endure. What's he like? Ebener, I mean. He's my half-brother and I've only met him a few times. I don't even really remember him. It was so long ago. Priya blinked. He is a very kind man. Something he said he got from his mother. He is not like Ebener, if that's what you are wondering. I wouldn't know what it would mean to be like my father. Anyway, my mother always tells me I'm like my father, but I've had people say the opposite, that I'm nothing like him. Priya placed a hand on his cheek, capturing his gaze with her color eyes. You're like no prince who has come before you. I can say that for certain. Cam laughed. What? You knew the line of princes that came before me? He had a moment of realization. Wait, do you? Priya took a breath. It was the first time he'd seen her unsettled by something, a genuine human reaction. My consciousness has existed for some time. My body is young, but I have memories that span millennia. Cadden's jaw hung open for a long moment, until he realized and snapped it back shut. Well, I've always had a thing for older women. Priya smirked at him, not giving up her laughter so easily. It does not make me who I am. I am an amalgam of several consciousnesses that were incomplete, woven together to become a whole. But I still have a human mind of my own identity, my own will. That's not what I expected, but I think I could get used to that. Captain put his arm across the back of the bench behind her. What do you think of me? I must be boring to you. I'm not made of an algorithm of different minds. Amalgam, Priya corrected. What? That's what I said, isn't it? Priya shook her head. I think highly of you, Prince Karna, and not because I am programmed to. I chose to become your betrothed. When the Lord Cynic made the offer to me, I devoted myself to you then, and I will remain so indefinitely. Indefinitely. Cadden didn't know how long that would be, but he liked the sound of it. What parts of you are human and which are machine? Shit, I mean, I wasn't referring to those parts. Just, back in the palace, you did some funky stuff with your arm, and your eyes started glowing. I have ocular implants, a neural interface network, and several interchangeable attachments in my arms. My legs are also outfitted with skeletal enhancements, and my vital organs, excluding a few, are artificial. She touched his hand, grasping it firmly as she leaned close to him. But my skin is real, and everything else about me. Nothing you need to fear about. Cadden found himself breathless. And your lips? Priya nodded. Real. Cadden felt the moment approaching. An intense build-up in anticipation of his lips touching hers. Mila cleared his throat. Pardon me, Your Highness. He stepped out of the cockpit and into the open. I've located asylum and we will be making our final jump. I suggest you both strap in out of precaution. Flustered, Cadden stood to his feet, prepared to give Mila a talking to about minding his own business. But the wind came out of his sails the moment he looked into his mentor's eyes. Do you need someone in the co-pilot's chair? He asked, trying to save face. I called dibs, Priya said, slipping past him and hurrying to the cockpit. Mila shrugged, giving Cadden a wily-eyed smile. Better be faster next time, son. Cadden sighed, sitting back down on the bench seat of the shuttle alone. He strapped himself in, waiting for the jump to spin up. It was an odd sensation to him still, having only left planet Cars a handful of times over his lifetime. I want you to live under a blue sky and a bright sun. His mother had always told him to have what I never had, and she kept that promise, something he now knew he had taken for granted. All those things she'd said about her past life, the way things were in the old conglomerate, how she was a completely different person, it was all true. He's doubted it before, but it was true. He'd seen the way she handled herself, the way she handled a blade. She hasn't let herself get soft, even after all those years. Either she had trained in private to maintain that level of skill, or the experiences that had instilled it had been so brutal that they were permanently installed. He could see her face, her kind smile she reserved only for him. Some things you never unlearn, Cadden. A tear materialized in his eye without him even realizing. He wiped it away, breathing out through pursed lips. She's gonna be okay, he told himself. She can survive anything. The jump was spun up. Cadden closed his eyes, trying to calm his gut. He'd lost his stomach once when in the middle of a shuttle jump, and didn't want to repeat it, especially not in front of Priya. The embarrassment would be the end of him. A surge of turbulence rocked the shuttle. Cadden felt like he'd been turned into a balloon, his body feeling like it was being stretched and pulled, then suddenly compressed back to its normal state. The dizziness and headache showed up immediately after, but it was a welcome sign that the jump was complete. Priya popped up from her seat, waving for Cadden to come to the cockpit. Come look, she said. We're here. Cadden forced a smile, taking his time while removing his harness. His stomach was on the verge of ruining the moment, but he suppressed it as much as he could. Slow breathing and steady movements kept him from losing it. But it was all done and over once he looked out the view window of the cockpit. Asylum Station was an enormous construction. It had the appearance of a pyramid with 6 faces, mirrored on the top and bottom, giving it the silhouette of a diamond. The entire structure was active in some way, with various structures that all probably served some sort of purpose. Where do we dock? Cadden asked. I don't see a spot to land anywhere. Mila grabbed the comm from the dashboard in front of him. We have to say the secret password first, he smirked. Hail, Asylum Station. Messav shuttle on approach. Requesting dock access. Empress Cars sends her regards. The Crown Prince, Cadena, aboard. Cooperation appreciated. There was silence on the other end of the comm, dragging in for a while. Cadden looked at Priya, but she didn't seem to know what to expect either. How long will they keep us waiting? Cadden asked. Did you do it the right way? Mila rolled his eye, but couldn't help but laugh a little. If you'd like to give it a whirl, be my guest. These are crids and we're dealing with, not military types. They don't speak in code, they speak plainly. They say what they mean and they expect you to do the same. Priya took Cadden's hand. I'm sure the message has reached the Lord Syndic by now already. It just takes. An opening appeared on the nearest side of Asylum, a blue energy barrier separating them from the inner docking bay. Hail, Messav shuttle, a demeaning voice said. Titanaya, daughter of Ebona, welcomes you and Prince Cadden aboard. Dock and await instructions. Mila had a wide grin on his face, likely feeling vindicated. See, you should trust me, son. I've been around longer than you have. I know a few things. Let's just hope they're willing to help, Cadden said. He watched closely as they approached the dock, passing through the energy shield. He has to help us. He's my brother. Temper your expectations, lad. Ebona's loyalties are to Asylum first, Mila explained. At the very least, we know you'll be safe here for the time being. Docking was an automated process on the station, which was a surprise to Cadden. Robotic arms took hold of their shuttle and set it down where they wanted it. rather than relying on Mila to set it down in the right spot. It seemed efficient, albeit a bit intrusive. When everything seemed to be finished, Cadden started toward the rear hatch. "Hold it, son," Mila said. The nice lady said to await instructions. "You don't want to go making her mad now, do you?" Cadden grumbled. "All of this waiting. I'm sick and tired of waiting. It's time we get to tell someone what's happened to us on planet Cars." Time someone heard the truth. A buzzing noise filled the shuttle, a foreign sound Cadden had never heard the ship make before. Before he could react, a thin blue line of light appeared in front of him, passing through the roof and the floor even though they were made of solid steel. The line unfurled into a flare plane of light, before scanning the ship back and forth several times and disappearing. "See, they just wanted to scan us," Mila said, standing from the pilot's seat. He walked up to Cadden, planting his hands on his shoulders. "Patience is something you'll need to learn, lad. No sense in rushing things." The back hatch of the shuttle opened, appearing to do so on its own at first, but it became apparent that the Krebsen had also taken control of their shuttle entirely. It was a level of control that Cadden found disconcerting. Mila led the way down the ramp, Cadden following close behind. Their ship had been tucked away into a squared-off room, its own little stall on the side of the docking bay. The walls were metallic, but appeared untouched by any sort of wear and tear, with no sign of damage visible to the eye. From outside their stall, a woman appeared. From afar, Cadden didn't know what to make of her. She was dressed in a silver bodysuit that hugged her body closely, leaving little to the imagination. Her hair was stark and white, contrasting her youthful complexion and body. She wasn't far from Cadden's age, by the look of her, though the hair had initially confused him. "That's Titania," Priya whispered in Cadden's ear. "She is the natural-born daughter of Ebener and Safi." "Right, okay, and why isn't he here to meet us?" "Quiet," Mila hissed. "The Krebsen may not expect the same level of formality as you're used to, but they do not take kindly to strangers whispering about them in secret." "It is no matter," Titania said, as if she'd heard every soft whisper they'd just spoken. She was still a fair distance away, and held them in silence there as she finished her approach. Her skin was a dark bronze, her features seeming to be made of characteristically mess-of attributes mixed with something else. Glancing to Priya and back to Titania, Cadden could see a subtle resemblance. "Your mother is Krebsen," he blurted out. Titania seemed unaffected by the errant comment. "She is. I am the first fruits of the new order, the tree established by my father and mother. My twin brother and I serve asylum in whatever way we can, much as I am sure you do for your mother's empire, Your Highness." Cadden nodded. "That's why I'm here actually. You see, we were." Mila held out his hand to silence him. "Forgive me, Lady Titania. We are here on a matter of some urgency. We were hoping to speak with your father in person about it." Titania's color, eyes drifted away from them, revealing the human side of her that she did such a good job of hiding. "I'm afraid your timing is unfortunate. You have arrived in asylum in a time of great turmoil and unrest." Mila's brow furrowed, his bushy eyebrows curling at the corners. "What do you mean, turmoil and unrest?" He laughed, regretting it instantly by the look in his eyes. "Is something the matter? My father, the Lord Syndic, is nowhere to be found." Chapter 4 Nenunga 1 How many hours has she been missing now? Nenunga asked. He was seated on the edge of the bed in his quarters, the room untouched by all of the chaos that had unfolded the previous few days. "It's been over 24 hours, my lord," Sid replied. He was kneeling on the bed behind Nenunga, rubbing his bare back with his soft hands. "They are nowhere in the Monolith. The palace guard have searched everywhere a handful of times. Every secret passage and hiding place. Dictation. I'm not at all surprised that she managed to escape, Nina, NGA, said, especially with the help of that cyborg. I always knew he was looking for an opportunity to run."
That that chapter's going to be all goofed up. Hey, it's working pretty smoothly, though, I gotta say. You know what? It makes me wonder. Is there... What if I do this? What if I export this? And let's open it. And I'm wondering, okay. You know what? Let's see. And we'll change the text to, you know what, I want to see.
Chapter 1 Crawlers they're attaching to the hull? How in Oth's name is that possible? Captain Reshko didn't seem to believe it, even as Gerald showed him again. He zoomed in closer this time on the vid screen, hoping that would make things a bit clearer. They slipped through the shield barrier. Sir, it can be done, but these are crimson pilots. They're half machine. No.
Will it highlight?
Chapter 1 Crawlers they're attaching to the hull? How in Oth's name is that possible? Captain Reshko didn't seem to believe it, even as Gerald showed him again. He zoomed in closer this time on the vid screen, hoping that would make things a bit clearer. They slipped through the shield barrier.
I wonder. Oh. See if I can get this to work.
3% page 1 of 1 in chapter.
That didn't work. That did not work. Yikes. Is it on there? Okay, that's proving to be a little more difficult than I thought it was going to be. It's only on mobile that it does that. That means I would need a... Okay. That's going to be a little tricky then to make that happen. Okay. Where are we at? Where are we at, though? See if we can pick up where we left off. Probably don't. What? Chapter 5. Oh boy. Okay. Go on all the way down. Yep. Oh my goodness. Okay, I suppose I can do this first. Oh wow. And we'll start speaking that.
Chapter 5 Gretchen 1 Gretchen wasn't used to wearing grey, much less an officer's uniform. It was a little snug, but it was the best Surly was able to provide her with. The breast of the uniform bore an ensign's rank, the white star of Jadana replacing the red star of Seren. It pained her just to wear that symbol, but it had to be done. For the sake of the mission, she had no choice. You won't have long, Surly had told her the day they planned it. Gretchen could still remember the way she leaned up against the bars of the cell from outside. I can buy you about 10 minutes, 15 if we're lucky. That's all I'll need. Get me in a fighter and I'll hightail it out of here. We've got a problem. Though. What's that? Surly had pointed to her hair. That's gonna get you noticed. I'll see if I can sneak you an officer's cap, too. It'll look a little odd, but some of the greys wear them, if they're pretentious. Gretchen adjusted the cap on her head as she strode through the halls of the Dauntless, holding her head high as she passed other officers along the way. Her red hair was tucked up inside as best as she could manage, a little peeking out at the nape of her neck. She counted each step she'd taken from the brig. It was the best way she had to time the whole operation. If one step was half a second, she had 1,200 steps. After that, the guards would know something was up and they'd be on the chase. Every step after that wouldn't be guaranteed, so she would count. The lift was up ahead. The door parted, 2 officers stepping out. Her chest thumped, but she tried to keep her cool. They were in the middle of a conversation, passing by her without a second look. Once you're in the lift, you're almost there, Surly had said. That walk down that hall is gonna seem longer than it is. But if you can make it to the lift, you'll be set. It will be a straight shot to the docking bay. Right. Just get to the lift. Gretchen pushed the button inside the lift for the docking bay deck, double-checking multiple times that she'd chosen the right one. She pressed her back against the wall as the doors closed. A hand reached through, and the doors opened again. Thank God, an officer said, stepping into the lift. Almost didn't make it. Gretchen held her breath, hoping he didn't see the slight jump she made at the sight of him. She made herself small in the corner as he selected his destination. Docking. He asked as the doors closed. He was leaning against the side wall of the lift, facing her at 90 degrees. What do they have you doing there? Gretchen shook her head side to side. Just passion pawns. Gotta keep him in line, you know. The officer huffed. Tell me about it. I bet they get pretty rowdy at times, yeah? Gretchen nodded. Nothing more. Say, I'm not sure I've seen you around. You want to grab a drink sometime? There's war going on out there. Gotta let loose sometime, right? The lift stopped at her floor. Gretchen was standing there as the doors bittered, squeezing her way through the first chance she got. The officer shouted after her. Hey, what gives? I know how to take no for an answer, you know. Not interested. Gretchen caught herself rushing. Her footsteps matched the ice of her heartbeat, beads of sweat forming under her collar. She slowed her breathing and her stride. Now was not the time to lose her composure. It was a straight shot to the docking bay, like Surly had said. But it was the longest individual stretch of the route. The path took her down a long corridor, with adjacent rooms lining the hall on either side. Classrooms and simulation stations, all of them empty. The Jadana mutineers didn't have time for training and practice. Not when they were being hunted down by the Seren fleet. Whatever Razik's plan was, it had gone off the rails quickly. But Gretchen was going to put a stop to it. A single fighter was all she needed. She'd punch it out the docking bay and jump as soon as she was clear. The plan after that was a little fuzzy, admittedly, but if she could act fast enough, the Seren fleet could pinpoint the Dauntless's location with some accuracy, and provided they didn't slip away, they'd be able to surround the commandeered vessel and take it back. At least, that was what they were hoping would happen. Surly had made it clear there were no promises, but they had to try. The desperation move was the only move. The doors to the docking bay were only a few yards off now. On that final approach, Gretchen became keenly aware of the sound of her boots on the metal floor. Her own breathing sounded like the engine of the fighter. 1900, 1901, 1902. Alarms. The lights lining the corridor flashed red. Gretchen froze. She heard a voice from inside the docking bay. It was coming toward her, fast. From the brig? Where is she now? Gretchen panicked inside. She looked to her left and found nothing, but to her right there was a door. She stepped inside just as the doors to the docking bay were starting to open. Oh shit, it was a classroom inside, and there were two pilots in the opposite corner of the door. She had her flight suit bunched up around her ankles, bent over a desk. He was unzipped and behind her. Both of them looked at Gretchen with terror in their eyes. Officer, we Gretchen gave a stern look to both of them. She wielded the authority that grey uniform gave her, puffing up her chest. Or maybe it was the cap? So you're the two who've been sneaking in here, Gretchen said, feigning offense. She peeked out the small window next to the door. Several officers ran past the room down the corridor, oblivious to the fact that she was right there under their noses. The two pilots were zipping up now, but they'd prove an inconvenience if she let them leave. She couldn't afford witnesses. Where do you think you're going? The alarm. We need to be at our posts. Gretchen shook her head. No, the two of you will stay here. I'll be back to deal with the both of you shortly. Yes, Mum. Gretchen cracked open the door, listening for footsteps. When it sounded clear, she stepped out into the hall and took off toward the docking bay. Through the doors, across the floor, up the ladder. She visualized every step of it in her mind as the docking bay doors parted for her. A pair of Marines were posted just inside, standing around, indifferent to the alarms that were sounding throughout the ship. Gretchen had to act the part. What are you two doing? Sergeant told us to stay put, Mum. Just following orders. Get outside, the both of you, Gretchen ordered. We don't need someone coming through those doors. Understood. It must have been convincing, because the two Marines did as they were told, and Gretchen did it all without losing a step. She could see the fighters now, across the docking bay floor. Just a little further. 1200. Hey, that's her. But Gretchen had already taken off. She spotted the red ladder leading up to the open cockpit, visualized herself leaping up and catching it. Those boots behind her were catching up. She was going to have to jackrabbit that fighter and take off through a launch tube. There would be no time to open the bay doors. Her hand struck the metal railing of the ladder as she caught it, the leap she took giving her a head start from the bottom. She scrambled, but those Marines were right in her tail. She felt a hand grab hold of her book as she reached the top. Kicking with the other foot would just get her dragged to the floor, but she had her cap. She flung it at the Marine's face, the hard plastic brim striking him between the eyes, giving her the moment she needed to escape. In one fluid movement, she kicked down the ladder and settled into the cockpit. The fighter's engines rumbled, the tableau base screen coming to life in front of her. The canopy closed over her head, sealing her in. She had one shot at this. She rolled her fighter out of its spot, steering wide to avoid crashing into another fighter or one of the engineering rigs and getting stuck. The Marines in the docking bay floor were shouting, throwing tools from the engineering rigs at her, anything to try to get her to stop. And all that effort was in vain. She turned toward the launch tubes, passing by the flight lane, but out of the corner of her eye she saw the docking bay hatch wide open. It must have been her lucky day. She changed course, picking up speed, rolling off the edge of docking bay on her wheels. She allowed herself a celebratory shout or two, and cursed Razik, and the entire crew, who had betrayed Seren. All right, girl, let's clear this spot and jump out of here. A blip appeared on her tableau base screen, a friendly, which meant the opposite given her circumstances. What the hell? Was he waiting in a launch tube for me? Shots passed by the hull of her fighter, intentionally missing. The comm crackled. Bring it in, Spitfire, Steven said. My aim feels a little off right now, but I promise you I'll get it back in a second if you test me. Gretchen ignored him, flipping through the controls on her console to spin up the jump. But when she did, nothing seemed to happen. The command went through. She even punched it in again, but the fighter jump drive wouldn't spin. She grabbed her controls, but those were a dud, too. No matter what she did, the fighter wouldn't respond to her inputs. I see you're getting acquainted with the new security protocols, Stevens said over the comm. Courtesy of the Lord Cynic of Asylum. Your fighter is under remote access control, Norim. You can try whatever you want, but you're not going anywhere. Against her better judgment, Gretchen grabbed the comm. Fuck you, you spineless fuck. Gretchen's fighter started a wide-angle turnaround, pointing itself back in the direction of the Dauntless's docking bay. Off, damn it. Gretchen slammed her hands down on the console. Stevens' fighter sidled up next to hers, his face clearly visible through the canopy windows. You should have cooperated, Norim. When you have the chance, the captain is gonna have to go harsh on you now with this stunt you just pulled. I won't even be able to help you. She grabbed her controls, throwing them in Stevens' direction as though to ram him, but nothing happened. She contemplated grabbing the eject bar, but she wasn't in a flight suit and suicide wasn't something she had the stomach for. The fighter flew itself back into the docking bay, the smoothest landing she'd ever made, and standing there on the docking bay floor was Razik himself, the white chops of his beard poking out over his collar, hands folded behind his back. Fucking hurry, Mom, she found herself saying, anticipating the opening of her fighter's canopy. She was her only hope now. When the canopy opened, 4 hands reached in and ripped her out of the cockpit. They let her fall on her back, the wind getting knocked out from her lungs as she hissed and curled up into a ball. She watched a pair of polished boots clomp across the docking bay in her direction. Captain Razik stood over her, hiding his rage behind narrowed eyes. To the brig, sir, one of the Marines asked. Razik pursed his lips. Nah, not this one. Put her in the can. Chapter 6 Abby 1 Abby sat across from Relic in the cabin of her hopper. The hour was late, but that was what was demanded. The White Stars had embarrassed her and the entire Seren Admiralty, seizing numerous battle cruisers in their coordinated attacks. The Dauntless was one of a handful of ships that were now in the hands of the enemy, and Abby had no one to blame but herself. All of the signs were there. If she trusted her gut, she would have acted in her instincts and expelled any White Star sympathizers from the ranks of the new Seren Space Corps. But the times following the Exodus demanding reconciliation, healing, and forgiveness. The old wounds of the past had to be set aside to move forward. But Jadana had seized on relative silence ever since, picking at that scab, keeping it open, letting the blood flow. It was a sacrifice in the altar of their narcissism, to presume they were the center of the universe, and that all retribution and justice was owed to them. If it weren't also dire, it would have made her laugh. She looked up from her folded hands to Relic. He was leaning back against the seat of the hopper, eyes closed, hands plopped in his lap. Any word from you, Seren? Abby asked. I know you're awake. Awake? I'd argue otherwise. I know I'm not asleep, but I wouldn't call this awake, either. He opened his eyes for a moment, checking his wireless. Nothing, Mum. Not from the Admiralty or the office of the President-elect. Abby rubbed the palms of her hands together. You think I'm crazy for doing this, don't you? You didn't say anything, but I knew it when I saw the look in your eyes. If you had it your way, we'd be calling the shots from New Seren. Relic rubbed his eyes, letting out a sigh. I would, Mum. But I'm not the fleet admiral, and my daughter isn't on that ship. If she were, maybe I'd think differently. How old is your daughter? Daughters, Relic replied. 7 and 4. Abby nodded. If they were on board the Dauntless, off forbid. But if they were, wouldn't you do everything in your power to get them back? Relic leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. He looked at her with a cold stare, his blue eyes like ice. I would, but I'm not as powerful as you, Mum. The name Norim still holds weight, and you can still march around with impunity until the President-elect takes office. No offense. Abby tipped her brow to him. None taken. I'm fully aware of the privileges I possess, though I have a feeling once the President-elect is in office that will all end. This little endeavor hasn't been well received by the bureaucrats. Not that they'd know what to do in this situation anyway. Relic shrugged. I don't see that stopping you. Who cares what a bunch of loudmouth politicians have to say? I know what message this is sending to the Space Corps. A smirk appeared on his face. Morale has never been higher. We are under attack. Our ships are being commandeered, countless members of the Corps being held captive, and you're doing something about it. So whatever I think, whatever the President-elect thinks, don't let it factor into your decision one bit. Damn the consequences. This is the right thing to do. Abby sat with that for a while. She thought she was being selfish, and certainly there were selfish motivations for her actions. She had no delusions about that. But sometimes that was the right thing to do. The families of those men and women who were being held captive on those ships would have taken the same actions she was taking. They would have demanded satisfaction, and they were owed it. But if Gretchen weren't in the Dauntless, if she weren't a captive of the White Star Rebellion, would she be where she was now? Or would she be sitting back and letting things play out, taking precautions, betting on the long game? The Hopper made a slight adjustment in course, and Abby anticipated the pilot's announcement over the comm. Arrival at CSS Intrepid in 5 minutes, Mum. Admiral Carey's will receive you on the docking bay. Abby straightened in her seat. She was anxious to get to work. The gears in her head had been grinding against one another ever since she'd learned about the commandeering of the Dauntless. Like she was stuck, forced to stew in her thoughts, unable to take action. But that ended now. When they touched down, Abby was already standing in front of the side hatch door, a firm hold on the handrails to steady herself. When she stepped down onto the docking bay of that familiar old ship, she ignored the ceremony that was prepared for her, her eyes finding Carey's. "Welcome aboard, Mom," Carey said, saluting. He quickly adopted her demeanor, eschewing formality for the sake of expediency. "We're ready for you. We have a few possible locations to scout, with reconnaissance data that shows a pattern in the Jadanan fleet rotations." "Don't call them that." "Jadana? No," Abby replied. "A fleet. Those are our ships, our crew. If that makes them a fleet, it legitimizes them. They're a ragtag band of mutineers, terrorists no less." Mum, I meant no disrespect," Relic spoke up, trailing behind them. "Were the Jotna received on schedule? I trust they haven't been giving you too much trouble. They're an interesting bunch, not big on words, and they seem to keep to themselves." "They're like that," Abby confirmed. "They went through all the shit you and I did, the fall of Seren, the near extinction of the human race, the Exodus, and on top of that, they were tortured and experimented on by the Kraken, twisted into monsters they didn't ask to be made into." Carey's gave her a sideways look. "You were, too, Mum." Respectfully, Abby looked down at the floor. "I was lucky. They weren't as much." Carey's nodded, understanding as much as he probably could. It was something Abby had learned to deal with on her own. No one was particularly understanding. Those who hadn't been chosen by the Kraken like she was had only heard the horror stories of what they'd wrought when the Space Corps had welcomed her back into the service. The Admiralty at that time had made it clear that her past as a servant of the Kraken wouldn't be held against her, but it wasn't going to be publicized, either. No civilian or soldier would be able to understand even the most detailed explanation without context. It would be worse if they knew that one of the ones who had hunted them before was now among their ranks. Better to leave that information locked away where no one could find it. Carey's led them to an observation room, overlooking one of the side docks, a bay meant for loading and receiving, not for fighter pilots and hoppers. The space had been repurposed for the Jotna for the duration of their stay on Intrepid. Abby looked down at them through the one-way glass. "I've sat here and watched them for hours," Carey's remarked. "They're an interesting bunch to study." Abby rapped her knuckles on the glass. "You know they can see through this, right?" Carey's blinked. "Well, it's not like I was eavesdropping on them. They didn't act strange." Relic pointed to a group of 3. "That tall one there is Rook. He's the leader, one of them anyway. Former Marine, Spec Ops background. He fit right into the program from the start. The other 2 with him are Warlock and Gambit. Warlock was a Messav soldier before everything fell. A member of Nebana's elite royal guard, if you can believe that. Gambit is prison, an exile. We don't know much about where he came from." "I recognized Rook right away," Abby said, folding her arms in front of her chest. From the bay floor below, Rook looked up at the glass. His red visor on his helmet seemed to be pointed right at her. "You know him?" Carey's asked. "I was almost a part of the program. Wasn't a good fit." Carey's hid his lips. "Gotcha. I won't ask." He gestured to 2 of the others who were sitting together apart from the rest of the Jotna. "What about those 2? They always seem to be together. Doesn't look like they socialize much." "Romeo and Juliet," Relic said. "That shit is classified, and they don't say a word to anyone but each other." "Private channel?" Carey's asked. "You could tap it." Relic shook his head, emphatically. "And get my neck snapped?" "I don't think so. They get to do their own thing. Not just Romeo and Juliet, either." "How does that work?" "I saw ranks in their files. They're full-fledged members of the Corps, but they just get a pass because reasons. How else are you going to get the cooperation of a bunch of killing machines?" Abby stated. She turned away from the glass. Whoever was running the program back in the day figured this out early on. The carrot, not the stick. If you use the stick, they break it in two, beat you with one end, and stick the other in a place you don't want. Carey's eyes widened, like he was having second thoughts about having those super soldiers on his ship. And that's safe. They don't go off on you when they don't get their way. They're not toddlers, Relic replied. And the ones who are able to complete the program are the only ones you'll ever see. The rest plan cut it for one reason or another. All of these ones here will take orders, so long as you give them a good reason to. They're not interested in causing destruction or turning against us, except for that one, Abby said. Carey's looked back and forth between Abby and Relic. That one? Which one? Another time. Maybe, Relic said, making his lips into a thin, guarded smile. For now, just trust me when I say they won't cause any problems for you or your crew. Abby patted the side of Carey's arm. I'm ready to go to the bridge. Let's see what we're dealing with as far as these Jadanan terrorists are concerned. Mom. Carey's took out a datapad, handing it to her as they walked out of the room. I can get you up to speed on our way there. Like I said, there's an obvious pattern in their jump rotation. They have a number of other ships they've seized, and even a few of their own that we've learned about. But the Dauntless and the Indomitable seem to be their primary focus. Abby looked down at the datapad screen. There were markers along an arc, showing each point where either of the two Rook-class ships had been spotted. What are they doing? This doesn't look like an evasive pattern at all. Carey's nodded. You're right, Mom. It doesn't. Their other ships seem to be calling planet cars as orbit home. Why these two Rooks keep jumping in this pattern seems to be intentional. Cars? What with all the turmoil there, it seems they feel comfortable sticking close by. We have reason to believe they have connections with the usurper, Nenanga, as well. Abby looked closer. The pattern was there. There was no mistaking that. But the missing piece wasn't clearly obvious. She tapped the screen, displaying Seren fleet positions. There. That's what they're doing. Carey's looked at the screen, but he wasn't seeing it. What, Mom? They're trying to line up an attack. Every time they get spotted by one of our scouts, they pull back. An attack on what? Mom? New Seren? Abby touched the screen, highlighting one ship. Close, but they know better than to carry out an attack on the surface. They're going to attack a king, a checkmate. The magnanimous? Relic asked. Take out the Adjudication Council in one shot? They wouldn't even take out the Admiralty in its entirety. Though, Abby passed the datapad back to Carey's. It's a symbol, a show of force. They're big on that sort of thing. It used to be small-scale acts, but now it's escalated. They're still going to have the same strategy, though, to send a message. Carey's was nodding along with every word. It makes sense. And it's why they keep pulling back when they miss an opening. If they were attacking New Seren, there would be an infinite number of attack vectors. But the mag is defended, surrounded by patrols at all times. And those Rooks represent the greatest amount of firepower in their stolen fleet. Relic added. It would be a perfect 1-2 punch. They just need the right opening. They stepped into the lift. Carey's punching the button for the command deck. Abby looked at both of them in turn. We have to make sure they never get that chance. Chapter 7 Gretchen to the motherfucking cat. It seemed a cruel fate. Gretchen would have almost preferred to have gotten shot down. The embarrassment of having her fighter remote controlled and brought back into the docking bay was something she had to live with now. An insult worse than death for a fighter pilot. You either went out in a fireball of death and glory, or you live to a ripe old age with an honors title and enough medals to call yourself a pincushion. What you didn't do was get captured by the enemy and held in detention indefinitely. There was no glory in that. It really was a can, a cylinder of death. One circular wall surrounding her, like she was dropped in a silo with no way out. If she extended her wingspan, it would have been a little less than half the diameter of the circle she was trapped in, but she was small. The Marines tossed her inside, not even bothering to shut the door right away. If she tried to make a run for it, she'd have to go through them anyway, and that wasn't going to happen. You think you're smart? Razik's voice asked. He appeared, stepping between those two Marines to stand there in the doorway. Quite the little stunt you almost pulled when we got wind of it. I thought to myself, you know what would be fun? You guessed it, letting you think you'd gotten away with it. It makes the look of disappointment in your eyes all that much sweeter. Gretchen leaned her back against the opposite wall of the can. You couldn't have just shot me down? Razik shrugged, exchanging a glance with...
Okay. I am tired. We're going to cut it there. Short stream for tonight. I suppose I have to wake up early. And it's 10:30 for me, so. We will call it there. Have a good one, folks.